Hey guys, how is it going? So I am getting ready to head down for Workbench Conference. Super excited about that. And with the prompt for one of the days being travel, I thought it would be something where I should probably give you a few of what I would call Hesitant Handyman's travel tips. And I am a semi-experienced traveler across the US, particularly. I've been coast to coast on multiple occasions, probably not as many as people who actually travel for a living, but enough that I've learned a few lessons over the years. And so I thought I'd share a couple things that I have learned in my travels across the US, and not always just flying, sometimes it's driving too. The first thing, obviously, make sure that you're getting plenty of rest before you travel. Traveling is going to be exhausting. And I mean, it's one of those things where you've got to focus for hours if you're driving. If you are flying, it's just kind of sitting and waiting, but still not everybody can fall asleep on a plane. And so just kind of knowing that in advance, make sure that you're rested. There's a couple different stories that come to mind on this for me personally. One of them was driving a friend of mine back to college in Western New York. He and I did a road trip. It was an exciting thing. And before I tell this story, I'll go ahead and preface it by saying that the guy that was involved in this particular incident, he actually went on to be the best man in my wedding. So there was no ill will or anything at this. But what happened is he brought me along to help drive. I really only wound up driving the first day, and here's why. When I showed up at his house the night before, I was already packed ready to go. For me, this was just a vacation. For him, he was packing up his entire life. And so he spent a lot of time getting stuff packed after I had gone to sleep. So we're driving through, and we switched a couple times, and he was more comfortable in his car, and I was fine with that. But we were somewhere in the Rockies of Idaho, and all of a sudden I noticed the road was curving and the car was not, and I shouted out, "Hey, Michael." He snaps awake. He had nodded off at the wheel and nearly drove us off a cliff. He got it back on the road, and at that point we switched over because, it's probably good for the guy who actually got a full night's sleep to be driving at that point. The other situation was my senior year of high school. I went to a journalism conference in Washington, D.C. Some of you may have heard of it. It's the Freedom Forum. And that was something that was new the year that I participated in it. And so I was there and in the hotel, and it's my first time traveling by myself, and set a wake-up call. I had to be down for the bus at like 4 o'clock in the morning, which for a teenager, that's like, there's a 4 a.m. too? I thought there was only the 4 p.m. when we got out of school. So any case, put in the wake-up call for like 2 o'clock, woke up, took the call from the person calling me, and then hung up and went back to sleep. Woke up much later than I needed to be, wound up getting to the airport 15 minutes before my flight was supposed to take off, so they were no longer boarding. And thankfully, they were able to shuffle my flight around and get me on the next one to meet my connection in O'Hare, which then in turn got me home. But that was a scary thing as an 18-year-old who had never traveled by himself before, and I was a 17-year-old. But either case, it's for a teenager in general, being by yourself when you've never traveled before and having missed a flight, that's a pretty scary experience. So just make sure that you're rested. Next up, try to plan out your time in the airport. Specifically, I can think of a couple different situations where this has come up. One of them was my wife and I, when we were coming back from Haven Conference last year, we were flying back through Orlando, and in Orlando Airport we went in and we had plenty of time and wanted to get some dinner. Well, none of the dinner options in the concourse that we were in were something that we wanted. And so we looked around and we're like, well, hey, there's this place over on this other concourse. We'll just take the tram out to that, eat dinner there, take the tram back, get onto our flight. Which was a great idea in theory. But not having been in Orlando Airport before, we did not realize that once you have gone down a tram and come back on said tram, you have to go all the way back through security again. That put us a little bit snug to take off on our return flight. Was not especially thrilled like that because in our minds, we'd gone through security, we were still staying in a secured area. Why would we need to go through the airport security again? The other one is when I was going to the friend who actually nearly drove us off the cliff's graduation in college. One of the things that happened is I was traveling with his family and we flew through Detroit. And we had maybe an hour layover, though it was slightly less than that, all things considered. Well, our flight wound up getting in late, and I don't know if you're familiar with Detroit, but Detroit has one really long concourse. I want to say at the time it was the longest concourse in the nation, It might still be, I don't know, I don't really keep track of those statistics, but it was a pretty long concourse, and then there was like 2 smaller concourses. Well, we were on the long concourse, which was concourse A, down at like gate A2 or something like that. Our flight leaving from Detroit was at like gate C43 or something. You know, I don't know how high the C's go in Detroit airport, but it was towards the end of that spectrum. So what that meant is we had to sprint all the way to the tunnel that connected the A concourse to the C concourse, go all the way down the tunnel, and then sprint back up to the C concourse and get on our flight going there. And we got there just as they were getting ready to close the doors. So it was cutting it a little close. So, you know, at this point, if you've already bought your airfare, obviously you probably should have bought your airfare by now if you're going to be flying to Workbench Conference, then you don't really have much of a choice. But it's one of those things that kind of helps out when you look and just see, okay, where is this coming in? Where is this going to be going out? How far am I going to have to go? And is this layover, if I have an option to take a longer layover, is that going to help me in this situation? So sometimes you don't have a choice. I went to an event last year where the ticket was booked for me, and I had about a 45-minute layover in Phoenix. And that 45-minute layover was pretty much just enough time for me to use the restroom and get in line to get on the next plane. So yeah, and that I didn't have a choice on. So that's going to happen from time to time. One other thing, bring a power bank. So that's one thing that I take with me, and I have multiple power banks now. I've got a pretty beefy one that has 2 ports on it. That one is something that I will use anytime I'm traveling. I also have 2 smaller ones that aren't very big. I think they're maybe half of a charge for my phone. But the reason that I carry those, one, is when you're going to certain events like conferences, you may be in a situation where you need to charge something up and you might not be near something that can charge it. So the battery pack tends to help in that. The other thing is when you're in airports, a lot of times you'll find people who are like huddled around the one remaining plug-in in the airports. And some of the airports are starting to get better about this, but it's something where you just in general, if you've got a power source on you so that you don't have to go and fight somebody in a duel to the death over a power outlet in the airport, you're probably going to be better off for it. Last but not least, have fun when you're traveling. It can be a stressful thing. I get it. Long day. I'm going to be traveling 8.5 hours with the layover that I've got coming up for Workbench Conference. But it's something where this should be something that's fun to do. You should be able to go, you know, hang out with your friends or anything like that. We had one trip where we had to go for, it was my wife's grandmother's funeral, and we had a 4-hour layover, I think it was, in the Great Denver Airport. We had friends who live in the area that we said, hey, we're going to be stuck here for 4 hours. Do you guys want to have lunch? If it puts you in a position where you can catch up with somebody, do it. Obviously, not every airport is going to allow you to do that. Like if you don't have a 4-hour layover, that may be a little bit tougher. But, you know, just in general, try to find something fun. Check out what is good in the bookstores, or just wander around, see what little local flair kind of shops there are. Find someplace that you don't get to go to at home. With me, Caribou Coffee. That is one really random one, but it is something where anytime I'm traveling, if I can find a Caribou Coffee, I'm set. I'm kind of a coffee snob, and I actually really enjoy Caribou. I discovered that actually on the trip when we were at my wife's grandmother's funeral, and so I've just been kind of on them, and I was pretty excited when I found out apparently there's a Caribou Coffee not too far from the hotel in Atlanta, which kind of surprised me, but hey, you know what? I'm excited. So, in any case, hope you guys are having a great day. Hope you are getting your travel stuff buttoned down. If you're traveling today, or if you're traveling tomorrow, whenever you're traveling, however you're traveling, airplane, automobile, train, whatever it is, get there safe, be safe. We'll see you when we're at Workbench Con, guys. Take care.